do. So my story begins, well, I didn't even realize this, but when I went to therapy a little bit before I left that relationship, I realized that my story of abuse started in childhood.
Mm.
I was 5 years old the first time I saw a woman being abused. And throughout my childhood, I saw things like that happen. And I noticed that nobody ever called the police,
Mm.
nobody ever went to get help. And so from a very young age, I was programmed to believe that, hey, that was just a part of relationships and love because I had seen so much of that as a young person. And so I met my abuser when I was 19 years old. 19 is such a beautiful age because you're coming into young adulthood, but it's also a time of being very vulnerable if you don't enter it with the proper tools, which I did not have. And so my abuser, like most, he was very charming. He took me to the beach the first time we went on a date, and he took me out to nice places. And one of the red flags that I should have realized, but I just didn't know, I remember he got angry with me after going to a restaurant and he threatened to put me out of the car on the side of the road in a neighborhood that just wasn't good at night because we didn't agree about whether or not he should give the waitress a tip. I should have been alarmed when he threw my cell phone over a building and broke it. I should have been alarmed, when he would cuss and say all kinds of things to me. But because from an early age, I had been taught indirectly that relationships of love had these kinds of things, I didn't know that I should have ran. And so I was with him 19 years of my life. And I tell people I went in as a college student, like the students I work with, as a professor, and I left as a mother of two entering middle age, which is a long, long time. And people ask, oftentimes, people in my situation, we get asked to explain, well, why did you stay? They don't ask the abuser why he abused. And so I've had to come up with answers. And it's a complicated answer. Abusers aren't abusive all the time. They're not abusive when they go to church. They're not abusive when they're out, at parties. They're charming. They're abusive when the door is closed and there's nobody to see it but you. And so for a while, I lived with the hope that it could get better, and it just never did. And I also lived with this feeling that if I just do everything a little bit better, maybe he'll change. But nothing changed until I was willing to make that change and actually walk away and save my life.
Well, that was good. You said nothing changed until I was willing to change and do something about it. So, at what point you named a lot of red flags, a lot of things that people experience all the time. When did it click in your head that, wait, this is abuse? When could you put that word to what you were experiencing?
So it should have happened a long time before it did, but it was about a year and a half before I left the abusive relationship. I had started working out. Everybody that knows me, I love working out. I'm at the gym a lot. And so I remember one day he walked in the kitchen and he's like, "Oh, your butt looks really good, but what are you going to do about your breast?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So, mind you, this what he hadn't hit me. He wasn't hitting me at the point when I realized what happened.
Wow.
And I said, "What do you mean?" When he said, "What are you going to do about your breast?" And he said, "Oh, if you ever got breast cancer, because I know it runs in your family, you could get implants to fix it." And so my mom is a survivor of breast cancer. And so I tell this story to let you know that yes, my abuser did abuse me physically, but it was the mental games and the mind games and the things that he said to me that was damaging because I had to decipher, is he joking? Is he really concerned? What's really going on here? And I remember Googling the comment that he made to me. And that was the first time I really saw something that said emotional abuse.
Wow.
And it made me start digging deeper. I've been hit before. I should have run. I should have known, hey, this is bad. But it took me a while to realize exactly what I was dealing with.
So it wasn't even the physical abuse that made you leave or realize that it was abuse. it was the emotional and psychological abuse that you're experiencing. And like somebody just put in the comments, the gaslighting.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. And that's the part that still stays with me. Physical wounds can heal. I know what it feels like to have a grown man put his fist in your face and break your glasses. I lived through that. I was also that 5-year-old girl that watched people get hit all the time. But the psychological abuse is something that lingers. It took me a while to be able to take jokes from people because I didn't know if they were being harmful or if I needed to stand guard and protect myself. People's tone of voice, I had a hard time deciphering, okay, is this harmful? Is this okay? And it was the psychological abuse that was the hardest because it's the one where you really have to try to figure out what's going on. And is it even because on the surface, some of the things that he said to me, people would say, well, that's just no big deal. But it's the pattern. It's when somebody's saying things to you every single day and they do it in a way to where nobody else sees it. And so that's one of the reasons why I have this whole idea and platform in a book I wrote called Now I Can Wear Pink. Because my abuser, he also never told me not to wear pink, but he criticized me every time I wore it. He told me what I looked like, and he said some pretty derogatory things, even once comparing me to a female body part based on how he felt like I looked. And so he never said, don't wear pink, but he said things that said, don't wear pink.
I think it's so powerful how sometimes people don't even realize the psychological aspect is so significant. And so, what for you, I'm going to come back to that, but I want to ask you, what for you was the breaking point for you? When was the moment or the day that you decided, I have to get out of this relationship?
So that day for me, I call it my freedom day. It was 6 years ago, July 25th, 2020. You know, the world was falling apart. It was COVID. And that was the day that I left the abusive relationship. But it was also the day that I almost lost my life. My abuser, he literally just lost it and came in the living room. I was there with my children, and he said, that's it. I've had it. And he put his hands around my neck and he squeezed and he squeezed, and I did not know if he was going to stop. And I remember feeling something inside of me say, now you can leave. And it wasn't a literal voice, but it was that feeling because I know as a believer, I had been praying to God a lot about what I needed to do. And I knew what I needed to do, but I kept making excuses for why I couldn't do it. And so I knew in that moment, that was my cue that I needed to get out. And I realized that was my last chance. And I don't know what made him stop squeezing that day, but he did. And he stormed out of the house, and me and the children, we grabbed what we could, we got in the car, and we drove down the interstate as far as we probably about 200 miles away from home.
So you just mentioned your faith. How important was your faith in your decision to stay for 19 years? 19 years. What part did your faith play in that? You had two children together.
So my faith played a role in some ways I feel like it kept me there, but in some ways it also made me leave. And so when I say I believe it kept me there, in the last few years of my relationship with the abuser, he had fallen very ill and he had a lot of health issues. And so as a believer, I wrestled with leaving someone when they were at their lowest point. I wondered, what were people going to say about me? I'm leaving this person who's critically ill, who can't really take care of himself. But at the same time, he was still being abusive to me. And so I wrestled with, am I still kind? Am I still a Christian if I leave? On the other hand, my faith helped me to leave because, like I said, that day when my life could have ended, I literally felt, now you can leave. I knew that was it. There were just so many things that had happened to me up until that point, and I just knew I did not have more opportunities to leave and still be here. And so, yes.
Do you feel like that was your permission in that moment? Like someone had given you permission in that moment to say go, you know?
Yeah, I think so because I had been looking for excuses over the years. And I remember I started journaling about a year and a half before I left the relationship. And in my journal, there were times when things would happen and I would write about them. But in between the really bad things that would happen, like a physical attack or something that he would do to me, there would be the so called good days.
Mhm.
And so my journal would have some empty pages in between. And so, yeah,
Mm. So if you were talking to a survivor right now that is struggling with their heart, their faith, maybe I talk to a lot of survivors who have a sick partner, someone who can't take care of themselves, and they're wrestling. If I leave, what will people say? For someone who's wrestling with that thought process right now, may have experienced physical abuse or psychological abuse or both, what would you say to them?
I would tell them what a counselor told me. And this was the first counselor I went to, and I ran away because what she told me scared me. And I remember saying, I can't leave him because he's sick. I cannot leave him. And she said, well, what if you could still love him and care for him from a distance and get yourself and your children to safety? And so that's what I would ask that person is, what if they could still care for that person, but at the same time bring themselves to safety?
That's good. That's really, really good. You mentioned a good point. You said he was still ill, not well, but he still had enough strength to strangle you, to, you know what I mean, to do those still harmful things to you. And oftentimes abusers, although they're sick, if they can't physically hurt you, they're still hurting you with their words. And so I hope that someone that hears that really finds his strength, because that therapist, that was good. You can love them from afar and still care for them from afar. So tell me, what does your life look like now? How did you heal? How did you even begin the process of 19 years? You have two children, and now you're starting all over. How did you even start the process of healing? And what does your life look like for you?
It's been an interesting journey. And a part of it was that period about 6 years ago when I left. And you know this, Lisa, I would watch the live sessions that you did on Stand Up Survivor, and I would be there like every week,
I
tuned
remember.
in, watching. I did go to a counselor, and I actually started talking with her before I left the abusive relationship because I realized, like I said, my journey of abuse did not start in adulthood, it started in childhood. So I had to go back and revisit all of that. I also had to learn what a healthy relationship looked like because I really didn't know. I hadn't seen enough of them modeled for me, and I just did not know. And so it has been a process of healing. And so today I am married. I've been married to a really wonderful man. We've been married for 4 years, and he's really incredible. And so I would tell anybody, like, if you feel like, oh, my life is over, this is my last chance at love, be willing to take a chance. Because even if you don't find a love outside of yourself, one person you are going to start to love is you.
That's
And
right.
then once you start to love you, that can open up that opportunity for you to love someone else. And so I'm really grateful for that. And like I said, I am an advocate today for other people trying to leave. I give them the physical evidence that you can leave because I think there are a lot of things that are causing people to be fearful. And I do realize the most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive relationship is when she tries to leave. But I want to remind you, like I tell everybody, my abuser tried to take my life before I ever left. He tried to take my life even before I had the opportunity to make that choice. So leaving is dangerous, but so is staying. And I believe you have to choose your danger because it's going to be dangerous either way. And my abuser, he never stopped trying until he left this earth. He never stopped trying to open the door and get back in. But you just have to decide, would you rather live in the danger of being in that abusive relationship, or would you rather try that second chance at life and see what it's like out there? Because I can tell you it was totally worth it for me to leave, and I think it will be for you as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Iris. Is there anything else you'd like to say that's, pulling on your heart, or anything you want to say to any survivor that's listening?
What I will say is that the process of leaving, don't feel like you have to do it all in one day. My counselor, she told me, she said, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And somewhere in my house, I have a card that says that because I wrote that reminder to myself. And sometimes people feel like they have to have everything figured out. Well, no. In my case, when I took that first move and decided to get me and my kids to safety, I did not have all the answers. I did not have it figured out. There were still difficult things that happened as a result of having that connection to an abuser that I had kids with. However, it was worth every risk that I took to have the life that I live today. And I tell my husband, he laughs because he sees me doing all of these things. And I said, I'm doing the things that I wish I could have done in my 20s and my 30s. But here I am at this wonderful age that I am doing it today. And it's like, just like the Bible promises, God will restore the years you lost. And I truly feel like that is the life that I'm living in today. And it's totally worth it to take that chance.
I love that for you. I get to see it all the time. I was able to meet her husband. He's wonderful. He's this big guy, and she's safe. She's always safe. And she has an organization, Now I Can Wear Pink.com. Please check her out. She does conferences like retreats with women, all these wonderful things. So she wears pink all the time. She has a very good reason to do so. So make sure you follow her. Her website is on the screen right now, as well as on the social media platforms. And she has a book. Tell us.
Yes, so this is the book, Now I Can Wear Pink. It's wearing its own disguise because if you've been in an abusive relationship, you can't have a book laying around talking about abuse or domestic violence. Trust me, I know from my experience. So I disguised my story. That's why it's in pink.
That was brilliant. Zana says, thank you so much for your courage and sharing it. Izzy said, the solid advice, not all in one day. Take it piece by piece by piece. I've known survivors who planned their escape for 3 years, 4 years, and then we create the safety plan. And when they're safe, they can leave. And so, Dr. Iris, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to bring you back on toward the end. So if anybody has any specific questions for you, we'll be able to chat. Okay.
Thank you.